Mach 10, Mach 12, Mach 13, Mach 14, Mach 15. It just continuously accelerates. And pretty soon we're so high and so fast that Mach number doesn't mean anything. There's no atmosphere up there. And then we begin to measure our velocity in terms of feet per second, thousands of feet per second. So we go all the way from 0 on the path to 25,800 feet per second. That's between 5 and 6 miles a second. It is an incredible ride. And when I talk about the ascent, I always like to talk about my first flight, because on the first one, we launched at night. So it's dark outside. But about halfway through the ascent, I could look out the front window and see the day half of the Earth coming. So we launched at night and flew through the terminal into the daylight before we ever reached orbit. So from 0 to 17,500 miles per hour, or 25,800 feet per second, in only 8.5 minutes. It is truly an eye-watering ride. Now, the shuttle was an amazing vehicle because it launched like a rocket. Then you had to live on it. So once we were up there, we had to turn our rocket into a space station because we were going to live on it for 8 days, 16 days, or whatever. We opened up the payload bay doors, and the payload bay doors had radiators in them to radiate all the heat out into space. And you probably know this, being engineers, that electronics generate a lot of heat, and we have to take all that heat from internal to the shuttle and get it out to the payload bay and radiate it off into space. And there are a number of heat exchanging systems to do that, to get it out to the payload bay doors. And we do all kinds of things in space too. When I was flying, we were preparing to build the International Space Station. So we were testing a lot of tools, equipment, and techniques that astronauts later used to actually assemble the space station. One of the things that I did on the space shuttle that was really interesting and very important was test improvements to the suit itself. Remember that white suit I showed you that weighs 300 pounds or thereabout? Well, we were going to build a space station in a location in orbit that was colder than NASA had traditionally gone. So they had to modify the suit to handle those extreme cold temperatures. They put the suit on the flight in front of me, ahead of me. The astronaut went outside to test it. It got so cold, had to terminate the test, come back inside. NASA modified the suit, fixed it again, put it on my flight, and I had to go out and test it. So we go around the Earth every 90 minutes. You have 45 minutes in direct sunlight, it's very, very hot. Followed by 45 minutes in the darkness, very, very cold. Okay, we prepare for a night pass. I have to get in position. I'm on a spacewalk with the suit on. I anchor my boots and the foot restraints to hold my body still. They rotate me towards deep space to get me as cold as possible so I can test the suit and how well it handles those super cold temperatures. So I'm standing there. In place, I have a thermal cube next to me that would compute the ambient temperature out there. Then I have some other devices on my suit that I'm going to test. So I'm standing there, we're moving. I can see I'm in the sunlight. I look over my shoulder and I can see the terminator coming. The terminator is that line between night and day. I'm in sunlight, I pass through that little gray area, I'm in darkness, and then all of a sudden, I can feel the chill begin to beat down into my suit. So I turn the different devices on, and I have a rating scale. I begin giving NASA a rating as to how well the suit is working. 45 minutes later, I look over my shoulder, I saw the terminator coming, pass through that little gray area. I'm in sunlight, and instantly I can feel the heat begin to beat down into my suit again. So I deactivated the devices, gave NASA a thumbs up, and the suit worked fine. And the one that they're using up there now is the same one that I flew back in the day. Very, very few changes from the day that we flew it. We did other things in space too. We carried plants in space, we grew them. Actually, planted the seeds, grew the plants. At the same time, scientists were growing the exact same plant here on Earth. And the idea is that we bring our plants back and they can compare the two to determine if there's any difference in the plants we grew up there and the plants we grew on Earth. We took laboratory mice into space. We had a new animal enclosure module, wanted to determine how well it worked and what would space flight do to the mice. The mother mouse was called a dam, the D-A-M. The babies were the neonates, and we had 3 different age groups of neonates. Wanted to determine what their mortality rate would be, whether the mother's instincts would remain intact, and so on. So we took laboratory mice into space. We performed Earth observation experiments, all kinds of stuff going on up there. You name it, we did it. Very, very interesting. And if you guys don't get that work, don't worry about it. That's good. One of the other things that I did in space that was quite interesting was test a robotic camera this thing, if you see a picture of it, it looks like a soccer ball. It looks like a big soccer ball, but it really is a flying robot. Its eyes are stereoscopic television cameras, and the idea is that everything the robot could see would be beamed back into the shuttle and back into mission control. So you can use the robot to inspect the outside of your space station or your space shuttle. If you detect damage, then you can send people out to repair it. So the first time that it was flown was when we flew it in space. So I took it out on a spacewalk, powered it up, ran through the self-test, and then launched it, and our pilot flew it around from inside in a test profile, and it worked really, really well. We got great pictures from the robotic camera. In fact, when we lost Columbia in 2003, Aviation Week and some other publications wrote about that project and how if it had been continued and they had it on Columbia, they might have been able to use that to detect the damage on the outside of Columbia before it came back. But like everything else with the government, there's no funding. So we flew a one flight on it, tested, then it was put on the shelf someplace, never to be resurrected again. But it's a really cool experiment that we did. So that's the end. We need to run it back to pick up. Once in a while, they would not. So you have a shutdown. But all three accelerate. See how it looks like it's in slow motion? The solid rockets at night, and then you're off to the races. The shuttle stack, this whole assembly weighed about 4.5 million pounds at liftoff. We could produce 7.5 million pounds of thrust. That's a lot of thrust, and that's why we can go so fast in such a short period of time. The first stage, as you know, is powered mainly by the solid rocket boosters. 2 minutes long. At the end of the first stage, the solids were done. They would be jettisoned away from the vehicle, and we would continue into orbit on the space shuttle main engines. Incredible ride. There's the 2 minutes, warning there, 2 minute light there. When you the solids separate, it's a big explosion. You probably saw that white light. If you weren't expecting it, you'd have a heart attack because it sounds like a cannon going off outside. Boom! And this white bright light, and then the solids separate, and then the shuttle main engines propel you all into orbit. Now I'm going to hit the forward button again and see what happens. But what we're going to do is kind of unique. It was unplanned. We took a satellite into orbit with us. It was a 3,000-pound, $10 million solar observation satellite. Our job was to deploy it. Our robot arm operator, Chakotla Chawla, KC. KC was our robot arm operator. KC lifted the satellite up out of the payload bay using the mechanical arm, placed it in the orbit. We initialized it, and we were supposed to back away from it for 48 hours, during which it would make measurements of the sun's corona. Satellite malfunction, and it developed a very slow spin in space. You got a 3,000-pound satellite very slowly turning in space, about the size of a small automobile, and it was turning with complex motion. Space is an amazing place. You can demonstrate complex motion in space. So it would turn in one direction, then undergo a nutation in another direction, undergo another nutation in another one. So it was wobbling all over space, this big 3,000-pound thing. Well, because it was turning, we couldn't catch it with a robot arm. So long story short, over several days of consultation, it was decided that Takao and I would go outside and try and catch it manually. That's right. Now, we couldn't see, its motion was so slow that we could not analyze it very well with our naked eyes, but the engineers on the ground, on console, could actually analyze its motion. They determined what the spin rate was, the complexity, and so on. We also didn't know whether it would be the motion would dampen enough that we could catch it by hand. Because as you know, if it's moving too fast, you can't stop 3,000 pounds very well by hand. The engineers that designed that thing were very foresightful, and they engineered in what's called minimum reserve shutdown. So the satellite had electromagnetic torquer bars along its bottom. You could energize those bars. They would interact with the Earth's magnetic field and dampen its motion. So, long story short, as we were going to go outside and try and catch this satellite, and I'm going to show you about 20 seconds of what it took 3.5 hours to do. When the video starts, I'm going to be on the left of the screen, Takao is going to be on the right, the satellite will be in the middle, and we'll catch it. But I guess I'm going too fast here. Before we do that, what you see is we both are inside the airlock with everything on but the helmets. And obviously we'll get our helmets on, we'll get the inner hatch closed up, and we'll gradually depressurize the airlock. We depressurize it gradually so that we can activate the suit systems to be sure they're working properly before we go all the way down to zero pressure and open the alga hatch. The suit, again, in space doesn't weigh anything, but it's still big and bulky. Classic backpack on the back. I've got a computer on the front to monitor suit functions. Look at how big and bulky those gloves are. When they're pressurized, they're very difficult to work in. All of your tools that you use outside have to be specially designed so that you can handle those big, bulky, pressurized gloves. You develop incredible hand and forearm strength because every movement you make, the suit resists you. If you want to pick something and close it, the suit is resisting. You gotta move your hand in to work it, the suit is resisting. So you build up a lot of stamina and strength over the months that you're training for the spacewalk. But anyway, we'll get our helmets on, we'll get the airlock depressurized, and we'll go outside. Now I'm gonna hit the forward button again, let's see what happens. Ta-da! We have success. I'm on the left of the screen, Takao is on the right of the screen, and you can see the Earth moving in the background. This is 17,500 miles per hour. Now we jumped way ahead. I grabbed my end, he grabbed his end. We're rotating that satellite forward so that we can lock it into the payload bay and bring it home. Notice the Earth in the background. See the Earth? When we were doing this, when we were rotating the shuttle, I could see the Earth begin to tilt out of the corner of my eye, and the vertigo set in. And the vertigo was tremendous. I was really worried at one point that we might not be able to get this thing done. But we managed to work our way through the vertigo. We caught the satellite, docking, and brought it home. Now again, you saw 20 seconds of what it took 3.5 hours to do. It was quite an event, but we're very happy. We got that thing and we brought it back. Now, here we go again. Any bets on whether it works? There we go. We have already performed the deorbit burn. Deorbit burn means we just fire the shuttle's engines to slow us down. The gravity pulls us back down into the atmosphere, and then we navigate our way home and dissipate all of that energy in a controlled manner. You know what happens to objects that enter the atmosphere in an uncontrolled manner. You know, they burn up. But we don't want to burn up, so it has to be controlled. And we re-enter at very, very high speed. Remember I said on launch, we passed Mach 1, the speed of sound in roughly 45 seconds. We exceeded Mach 25 on the way in. That's right, 25 times the speed of sound. And at one point during the entry profile, we're going so fast that the air actually ionizes. So that bright, hot glow you saw, when there's hot plasma generated by our speed through the atmosphere. Temperature out there varies. The hottest parts are somewhere around 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We're comfortable inside. The environmental control system is working properly. Thermal protection system, the heat tiles and all that stuff is working properly. And so it protects us inside. So we exceed Mach 25, and then we gradually dissipate all of that energy all the time, navigating around the Earth to hit a spot at Kennedy Space Center, all on the opposite side of the Earth, all with no engines. And of course, we do it because people like you that designed the thing, that did the programming, the flight controls, the aerodynamics, the navigation, all that stuff, makes the astronauts' job easy. The final part of the flight, of course, is the touchdown, and it's somewhat similar to an airplane, but a whole lot steeper than that. A typical airliner will fly a final approach angle of about 3 degrees. Our outer angle is at 45 degrees. You can see how steep it is. Things pause in there. And then the inner glide slope is 19 to 21 degrees. So it's a very, very steep glide slope, 7 times steeper than a regular airplane. Our touchdown speed is a little over 200 miles per hour. This is viewed through the heads-up display, as we call it. On the left side, airspeed is 311, 310 knots. Right side is altitude. R is radar altimeter, obviously taken from the outside. This picture here, landing gear has been lowering. Our commander is getting ready to do the landing. And again, the touchdown speed is somewhere of 200 miles per hour, thereabout. Your typical airliner will probably land 135 knots or something like that, 140 miles per hour. We're over 200 miles per hour because it's a big glider, no engines. Had to be landed right the first time because there are no engines to go around and try again if you balk a landing. When you land the space shuttle, of course, you can't just open the door and get out the way you do on an airliner. When roller wheels stop, it takes those of us on the flight deck about 45 minutes to power down the shuttle systems and transfer internal power to ground support equipment, which the ground crew will bring out. Also, you have to get used to being back. because you've been weightless for a while now. So you get back, and all of a sudden you're heavy. You don't stand up and walk so well. So that 45 minutes of powering down systems and so on allows you to gradually begin to get back to feeling a little bit normal. And then we open the hatch. The first person to come in is the flight surgeon. Doctor wants to come in, talk to us, check us out, and so on, see how we're doing. And then we gradually make our way off the shuttle in seclusion and begin to reacclimate. Okay? You've never seen astronauts walk off the space shuttle because it's always done in seclusion. Some people don't walk so well. The Russians, or the folks that are on the station now, when they come back from 6-7 months, they come off on a stretcher or wheelchair or whatever, because again, you haven't carried your body weight in a long time and it's difficult to stand up. If you're up there for 6 or 7 months, guess what? The feet become so tender that just stepping feels like they're stepping on needles, because they just haven't stepped on any hard surfaces and so on. So the feet are so tender, you're just not able to walk. Also, your balance is throwing off just a little bit. You don't negotiate curves and all so well, so it takes a while to get used to balancing yourself when you get back. But once we get back, we'll reacclimate. We'll take off those big, bulky, orange launching entry suits, change into comfortable blue flight suits, and come out and take pictures like this. This was taking about 2 hours, 2.5 hours after we got back. Everybody felt fine, so we came back out. We greeted the ground crew, thanked them for giving us a good, successful flight into space, and took pictures like this. Now, this is the end of the slide presentation. I want you to open up the floor and have some two-way conversation. So in the few minutes we have left,